we were running out of money. I mean, we were going to be in trouble, and we were going to miss our July 4th release date, which would really hurt the amount of business we could do on the picture.
How did Carolco acquire the rights to Terminator 2?
That was a deal, all right. What happened was originally the picture was made by Hemdale, all right? And the way Hemdale had done the deal was they had, on the underlying rights, were owned 50% by Jim Cameron, 50% by Hemdale. And Hemdale was run by this guy, John Daly, who was a character in our business, all right? One of the, again, foreign independent characters we dealt with. I never represented John, but of course I knew him. Mario always referred to him as John DeLay, not John Daly. And he was notorious about how hard it was to make a deal. And so this was going to be a job of work, all right? There were two jobs of work, one getting Hemdale's rights, and then the second problem was that when Jim got divorced from, she was a great producer in her own right, I'm blanking. In any event, in the divorce, he gave her the rights, his 50% share of the sequel rights to Terminator for $1. So we had to make the deal with her. And at that time, Jim's position is, she can't be on the set, she can't get a credit, I don't want to talk to her, all this stuff, right? So, God, I can see her in front of me, and I'm blanking on the name. So these were the challenges, right? Now, it started that because, Mario had developed a relationship with Jim Cameron when he was on the outs. And, after he had some, the failure of The Abyss and some other things, and he was not what he is today, all right? But Mario had convinced him to come up with the idea for Rambo 2. All right, now the credits for Rambo 2 is screenplay by Sylvester Stallone and James Cameron, all right? But the great ideas came from James Cameron, particularly that opening where you see Stallone there, against the metonymic fence, and he's a caged animal, right? And you see Richard Crenna come up, and then Stallone walks up to him, and Crenna says, "We got to send you back to Vietnam." And Sly says, "Do we get to win this time?" Place goes nuts, and that was a perfect setup. And all this stuff that Jim did, he's such a genius. And so the big issue with Terminator 2, as with all these sequels, is what's the good idea for the sequel? And in this case, it was unique because Arnold was the bad guy in the first one. Arnold's no longer a bad guy, right? Arnold's the good guy. So how does Arnold become the good guy? And what is the concept of the sequel? That was when Jim came up with that idea, discussed it with Schwarzenegger. They loved it. They brought it to Mario, said, "We want you to do it." But then Mario said, "I'll never get the rights. You'll never be able to do the deal with John DeLay." So what we did was, because I was on the, looking for, so I said to Franz Hoffman, "How much money," because he was the banker at Credit Lyonnais and a close friend of mine, "how much money does John owe you?" All right. He says, "He owes about $70 million. The bank's getting crazy." All right. I said, "All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer you $50 million for his TV library rights. All right. And $10 million of that he owes me back. And I'm going to take a security and everything he has for it." And I said, "You're going to have to force him to do it because he won't do it on his own." So, Franz said, "Sure." And so that's what we did. And then, of course, he didn't pay the $10 million back. And we levied on it and took the rights to Terminator. Yeah. And so we got it outright for $10 million. And John later sued the bank, claiming that, this was collusion or whatever, Franz and Peter, they knew each other. And he lost because the bank was owed this money. John owed the money, right? And that was his weak spot. So, yeah, I told Mario, this is the deal of the century for us. Get those rights outright for $10 million because they were worth, we knew there were more sequels, obviously. So, and then the picture was made.
And how did you confront James Cameron about going over budget?
Well, we started, when we went in, we kind of knew it was going to go over, right? And we had a meeting out at Mario's house in which I said, "Look, Jim, right now, we agreed we were going to have a 2-hour movie. We're not going to have a 3-hour movie. We're going to have a 2-hour movie. And right now they're telling me that what you got on the schedule is shooting maybe a 2.5 to 3-hour movie. We need to cut some scenes. We're not going to make the schedule." To which Jim says, but I don't know which 2 hours. And he wouldn't cut the schedule, and he went over. And you know, and then, you know, it's very hard to deal with him. And, you know, he's a genius, and he knows what he's doing, and he's focused entirely on that. He's not interested in money. He's not interested in anything other than him realizing the vision he has. And as an artist, who's to say he's wrong, right? You know, but we were running out of money. I mean, we were going to be in trouble, and we were going to miss our July 4th release date, which would really hurt the amount of business we could do on the picture. And so at 2 weeks over, I told them, you got one more week. They kept going. They were going to keep going. I said, this is stopping at 30 days. Sar wouldn't say a word about it. You know, he knew. And, you know, Jim still hasn't spoken to me again as a result of this, right? And I said, we're stopping. We're taking the picture. We edit the picture and deliver the picture so it's released on that, or you do it, one or the other. All right, told his lawyer this. Lawyer said, Jim's taking his name off the picture. And I said, no, he isn't. He doesn't have an Alan Smithy clause, and he's, directing 90% of the picture. He's directed 120% of the picture. So his name is on the picture, right? So it's either he edits the picture or we edit the picture. The picture is coming out on July 3rd, period, full stop, all right? And, you know, nobody likes that. You don't tell Jim Cameron that. Everybody in the business tells me you're out of your mind to do that with a talent like that. But we had to do it. I don't regret for a second doing it. I can still think he's the greatest genius that's ever been behind a camera, which I believe, and it was still the right thing for me to do, to stop that picture at that point. And we stopped it. Jim later said to one of the people I know, he said, look, the worst they can do is kill us. Let's make the picture work. And he delivered the picture. He edited himself. I mean, he can do anything. And delivered the picture. And of course, he cut 20 minutes of cut footage out of the picture. That, you know, was fully edited, everything was fine, but, you know, and he got it down, so we made all the shows per day, and we've all put it in the director's cut later for, you know, for video, but in any event, the picture was a sensation, and it was a sensation out of the box, and yet, at the end of the day, we went in at 89 million on that picture and ended at about 110, which was the most expensive picture ever made at that point in time. Now it's nothing, you know, I look at it and say, well, you know, that was a big problem for us because that was money we really didn't have, because that was more than you could pre-sell a picture. Even with incredible pre-sales, you can't get that level. And you know, we ultimately got out of it. We did about 150 million on that picture in the first couple of years, so it was a great success. But you know, at the end of the day, it would have been nice if we didn't have to spend that money. But I like to say that, okay, so the next picture he makes is True Lies, all right? That picture goes in at around the same, I was told by my buddies at Fox, around 85. That picture ended at 130, all right? Then there was the next picture called Titanic, all right? That picture went in at 110. That picture ended at 230, all right? So in the scheme of dealing with Jim going over budget, I'm happy with myself for achieving that result. And I can be the greatest admirer in the world of Jim Cameron, even if he'll never forgive me for shutting down his picture.
And you say he's still one of the greatest filmmakers ever was.
This guy is amazing. I mean, he can do everything. He could act if he wanted to. Another one of my favorite stories on the Terminator was we had one of the best second unit guys, Vic Armstrong, on the picture, did all the Rambos for us. And he quits after a week. So I called Vic. I said, what's going on? Is there a problem? There's no problem, he said. There's nothing for me to do. The man's putting out the smoke pots. There's nothing for me to do. He's going to do it all. He directs all the stunts. I'm not sitting around. You don't need to pay me to sit around. I said, that's great. We're happy to pay you to sit around. But he said, I understand if you don't want to. So he did. And I'll tell you another story this is a classic example of Jim Cameron. So he has the idea that, which is in the movie, you know, to have a helicopter fly through one of the tunnels, you know, one of the LA tunnels out there, right? And how are you going to do that? So we figure we can do a model shot. No. He wants to shoot the helicopter flying through the tunnel. Well, we told him you can't do that. There's no insurance for flying a helicopter through that tunnel. And, you know, so we shut down for the day, and Jim talks the helicopter pilot into flying the helicopter through the tunnel. And who is going to be on the camera rig in the tunnel being pulled back as that chopper inches through the tunnel? Cameron himself, Who else is going to do it? The operator wasn't going to get on that thing. You know, he wasn't insured. Jim shot the thing himself. No problems. Everything was fine. And of course, it's an incredible shot. You know, the zoom, you know, he zoomed it up, the zooming through the helicopter, zooming through that tunnel, you know, and there was another one, you know, because he wanted to flip a double tanker trailer. Because flipping a bus, flipping a car, I mean, come on, you do that in television, right? He wanted to flip a double tanker trailer. But you can't flip a double tanker trailer because there's too much ballast. They don't fall over. They crumple, all right? So we said, we don't think it's a good idea. No, we're going to do it. And as I said, it's dangerous. No, everybody's ready. The stunt guys, whatever Jim wants, they're going to do, right? And so we, you know, bar the whole thing in. The guy's locked in the cage, and we do the thing, and of course it just crumples. But it crumples with enormous weight. And, you know, the damn guy was like about this much left, you know, but nobody was hurt, thank God. And we ended up using the model shot, which is what we should have done after spending 3 days on that setup, right? But that's a genius. And, you know, he is a remarkable filmmaker on every level. And so I was very thrilled to have the chance to work with him on that picture, even if I had to be the bad guy at the end.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.